The Atlantic was no longer an ocean. It was a force, a living engine of chaos. Hurricane Vespa had bloomed into something unnatural, an atmospheric leviathan with a core pressure so low it created tremors felt by seismographs. Satellite imagery showed a swirling eye larger than Manhattan, yet the real anomaly lay not in the sky, but beneath the surface, 6,000 meters below, in the abyss of the Puerto Rico Trench. There, the black-budget salvage vessel Orpheus hovered in suspension, its titanium frame humming under pressure, a steel ghost in a place where pressure alone could pulp a man to paste. Commander Silas Vance stood on the bridge, knuckles white against the grip rail, eyes locked on the view screen. The silence inside was heavy, not from lack of sound, but from compression. Psychological and atmospheric. Every breath was filtered through scrubbers, tasting faintly metallic. The kind of air you only found in sealed tombs. Around him, his crew worked in uneasy quiet, each person attuned to the wrongness that saturated the environment. They weren't here for salvage. They were here to investigate a signal, one that had appeared only during the height of Vespa's storm surge, one that had no business existing. "Commander," said Sarah, the comms officer, her voice low, almost reverent. "Sonar is breaking." Her screen was a chaos of jittering waveforms. "Every active ping vanishes on contact. No echo, no diffraction, nothing. The sound just disappears." We're looking at acoustic erasure. Vance leaned over her station, where seafloor topography should have been displayed, jagged outlines of sediment and rock. There was a void. Not just an absence of return, but an anti-signal. A perfect sphere of silence, 5 meters above the trench floor, unmoving despite the raging currents stirred by the storm above. "Visual confirmation," Vance ordered. "Floods to full." The external lights snapped on, piercing the black with beams of synthetic daylight. Slowly, the sphere came into view. It wasn't reflective. It wasn't illuminated. It simply was. A matte black orb that consumed all light, suspended in water like a surgical hole punched through the universe. Around it, the particulate flow of the ocean warped and slowed, as though gravity had been rewritten in its vicinity. "It's not a sub," said Kalen, the chief engineer, quietly. "Not a wreck. Not rock." He was reading environmental telemetry. "No radiation, no magnetism, no temperature. It's colder than vacuum. This thing isn't matter, it's a concept." The command deck fell silent. No one wanted to be the first to say it. They were looking at something outside known physics, something that hadn't evolved or been built, something that had always been. "Extend the manipulator," Vance said finally. "Get a sample. Whatever that is, it doesn't belong here." The ship's hydraulic arm extended, slow and deliberate, creaking under its own strain. On the monitor, the claw reached forward, tiny against the impossible blackness. It made contact. Then the screaming began. It wasn't sound. It didn't move through air or water. It moved through bone, vibrating the spine, reverberating in tooth enamel and soft tissue. A shriek that bypassed the ears entirely and nested directly in the subconscious. A mechanical sobbing laced with static. Crew members staggered. One collapsed. Blood dripped from Sarah's nose. Lights flickered as feedback surged through the system. On screen, the sphere shattered, not violently but cleanly, dissolving into a cloud of black particulate matter that moved with animal intent. It swarmed up the manipulator arm, ignored every physical barrier, and began phasing through the hull. "Hull breach!" Kalen yelled, but the warning lights stayed green. "No structural compromise, but the mass is inside. It's ignoring material boundaries." The temperature dropped instantly. Frost bloomed across the ceiling, but the cold wasn't natural. It had a taste, like copper and ozone and old blood. Mist rose and hung in midair, not falling, but twisting into fractal geometries, delicate branches of frozen vapor growing in 3 dimensions. A crackling noise echoed through the bridge, like bones being reset in rapid sequence. Then the rain started. Vance got the call from engineering. Water was dripping upwards. Condensation peeled itself off the floor, floated, and hissed against ceiling panels. Inverted gravity, reversed entropy. He ran. The medbay lights flickered wildly. Dr. Aris stood frozen, staring at his hand. I cut it, he said softly. 10 minutes ago, it's healed. Vance looked, no wound. Then, the skin on Aris's hand smoothed further. Wrinkles vanished, hair disappeared. The flesh became pale, waxy, childlike, then thinner, semi-translucent. The bones beneath began to vanish, dissolving in reverse. The hand de-aged into formless tissue, then into clear, jelly-like mass. Then nothing. Aris screamed. The sound was cut off mid-breath as the process reached his elbow. Vance grabbed a medsaw, swung. The blade passed through Aris's arm like air, no resistance. The limb wasn't injured, it had been removed from time. The dust is rewriting causality, Kalen gasped over the comm. It's not physical, it's temporal. That cloud, it's not a substance, it's a protocol. It's altering the sequence of events. Back on the bridge, Sarah had stopped moving. She was typing endlessly. The lid is open, the lid is open, the lid is open. Her fingers a blur, the keys clacking in sync with the rhythm of the anomaly. Outside, the ocean had transformed. No longer black water, but grey sludge. Still, dense, lightless. All motion frozen in place. We're inside the breach, Kalen whispered. Time outside is paused. We're isolated in a bubble where entropy has reversed. The object wasn't just buried, it was sealed, and we just opened it. A crack formed in the forward viewport, not from impact, but from pressure. Inward. The ship wasn't sinking. It was being pulled, sideways. The compass spun in wild circles. The depth gauge began ticking backward, past zero, past meaning. We're not descending, Vance muttered. We're falling. Out. The Orpheus did not crash. It was simply no longer where it had been. One moment, the ship existed within Earth's deepest trench. The next, it hung suspended in a realm that bore no resemblance to the known universe. Outside the viewports, there was no water, no stars. Just a vast, motionless desert of white ash, stretching endlessly in all directions, lit by a bruised violet sky torn with black lightning, bolts that struck sideways and left behind echoing burns in the air like scars on film. Commander Vance stood motionless on the bridge, trying to process what his eyes refused to accept. The depth sensors were flatlined. Compass bearings spun in meaningless loops. Internal timekeeping had ceased to tick. His watch displayed no numbers, only a flickering symbol he didn't recognize. "We're out of phase," Kalen said behind him. His voice wasn't coming from his mouth. It came through the walls, the floor, the ship itself. He was fused into the engineering console, not metaphorically, but biologically. His right side embedded into titanium, his flesh laced with cable. This is the landfill of deleted timelines, the dump of discarded realities. Kalen's face twitched as if he were listening to something only he could hear. It's not punishment, it's containment. We weren't meant to see this. The sphere wasn't a beacon, it was a plug. Sarah was floating, literally, not from gravity loss, but from chronology collapse. She was flickering between versions of herself, uniformed and pale, civilian in her 20s, skeletal and ancient. 3 phases of the same person shifting between states, like a hologram under stress. Her lips moved in 3 directions at once. Vance stepped back from her, chest tight, sweat cold. "This isn't a place," he muttered. "It's a memory." He looked out at the horizon. It wasn't curving outward. It curved up, like they were inside the bowl of a forgotten dimension. The ship groaned beneath his boots, warping, its corridors twisting into angles that defied Euclidean logic. Doorways no longer led where they were supposed to. Gravity shifted room to room. "We're being rewritten," Sarah said, her voice suddenly sharp. "I'm hearing thoughts that aren't mine. Yours, Kalen's, the crew's. We're bleeding into each other." Vance turned to her. Her face was still hers, but her eyes were not. They held the weight of centuries. "The entity," she whispered. "It's not malicious. It's not intelligent the way we think. It's immune response. We breached a quarantined dimension, and it's correcting the infection. Us." On the monitors, a new horror unfolded. A rupture had opened in the sky. Not a natural rift, but a precise, jagged tear, like the seam of a stitched wound ripped open. And through that wound they could see Earth. They could see the Atlantic. It was distant, framed in violet light, but the storm still raged. Yet now something was rising from the trench, a thick column of grey sludge bubbling up from the seafloor breach and expanding through the ocean. Where it touched water, motion froze. Fish became statues. Currents died. Waves held mid-crest. Vance felt his stomach twist. "It's leaking back," he said. "It's not confined. The toxin, whatever this is, it's escaping." "The plug is gone," Kalen confirmed from everywhere. "The protocol we disturbed, it was compressing a previous incident. That sphere was a former vessel, a former crew. They became the seal. We replaced them by mistake." "Then we have to become it again," Vance said. The words came out instinctively. "We have to close the breach." Sarah blinked, and for a moment she was a child again, standing barefoot in grass, the illusion flickering. "What do you mean?" "This ship," Vance said, stepping to the control console, "was never meant to return. It was bait, disposable, a canary in the mine. That's why we were sent." No one wanted answers. They wanted to know if the lid still held. Kalen's voice came cold and certain. "Then we make it hold again." He rerouted full power to the gravity drive. Systems whined. The ship began folding, physically contracting, pulled toward its own core. Not with propulsion, but by brute force. "Not an explosion," Vance said. "An implosion, fusion, compression. We don't destroy ourselves, we anchor the wound. We become the new seal." Sarah didn't object. None of them did. The fear had left. There was only certainty now, and a strange calm that came with inevitability. They had crossed into a place beyond time, beyond ego, beyond self-preservation. Outside the ship, the white ash was rising in pillars toward the rift. Gravity was reversing. The storm's screeching wind reached them even here, though there was no air. They could feel it in their bones, a cosmic scream, not of pain, but of pressure releasing. The wound was hemorrhaging entropy. As the ship contracted, Vance felt his body flicker. He saw all versions of himself, boy, soldier, commander, corpse, layered like transparencies. He heard Sarah's memories, felt Kalen's regrets. They were no longer separate. They were merging. "We are the protocol now," Vance whispered. "The unexpected protectors." The gravity drive reached singularity. There was no flash, no thunder, just stillness. The Orpheus disappeared from the ash world. In its place, a new black sphere appeared. Perfect, silent, incorruptible. In the trench above, the sludge halted, recoiled. Time resumed. The storm raged on. But something had changed. Down below, embedded in silt and forgotten currents, a new anomaly pulsed. One that returned no sonar, no signal. It simply was. Waiting, holding. For a long time, though here, time meant nothing. The new black sphere rested in perfect stillness on the ash-like seabed of the breach realm. Silence pressed against its surface in absolute, unbroken continuity. Within the sphere, consciousness existed not as individual minds, but as a dense lattice of memory and identity suspended in frozen chronology. Yet deep inside that impossible compression, something still moved, not physically, but perceptually. A pulse, a thought, a collective breath. The crew of the Orpheus, Vance, Sarah, Kalen, Aris, and every echo of every timeline they had once occupied, existed now as overlapping strata of awareness. Not alive, not dead, not dreaming. Simply present, bound in infinite stasis, interwoven like filaments in a cosmic cocoon. They were the seal now, the barrier holding the chronological toxin from devouring everything above. And yet, even within that confinement, consciousness flickered. At first, the flickers were faint, like static, fragments of memory reassembling. Sarah's childhood field of corn, Kalen's first descent into the Mariana Trench, Aris at the university lab, staring at a petri dish under a sterile lamp. Vance sitting in his old apartment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator at 3 a.m., wondering why silence always sounded like someone breathing behind him. The memories twisted, layered, reshaped into something new, a shared awareness. We are still here. The thought wasn't spoken. It simply was, vibrating across the sphere's interior like a low-frequency tremor. Then another awareness rippled through the collective consciousness, a question. How long have we held? The sphere had no answer. Duration was meaningless. Seconds could be years, years could be instants. Here, causality folded over itself like molten glass. The only constant was pressure, cosmic, temporal, metaphysical, bearing down upon their collective selves. And then, for the first time since the Orpheus's collapse, something changed. Outside the sphere, in the violet sky of the breach realm, a new rift appeared. Thin as a hairline fracture, bright as molten silver. It split open soundlessly, revealing a churning darkness beyond. Not water, not sky, something deeper, something hungry. The sphere trembled. Vance felt it first. Another breach, another disruption in the timeline above, something trying to enter. Kalen's awareness folded through the collective. The entity is adapting, the toxin is evolving. Our compression was a delay, not a cure. A pulse of dread spread through the sphere. If the rift widened, if the seal failed, the chronological toxin would spill upward once more, invading the Atlantic Trench, then the thermocline, then the surface, rewriting the timeline in backwards cascades. The rain would reverse, the winds would loop, history itself would begin to unhappen. Sarah's voice, no longer fractured but unified, echoed across the sphere interior. We must reinforce, anchor harder, fuse deeper. But another awareness pushed back. At what cost? The more we merge, the less of ourselves remains. We won't just lose memory, we'll lose identity, meaning, selfhood. Vance knew it was true. The pressure folding the sphere tighter was erasing the boundaries between their consciousnesses. Soon, there would be no Vance, no Sarah, no Kalen. Only a singular organism, a timeless organ of containment with no concept of individuality. Yet what alternative existed? The rift widened. The ash ocean trembled beneath it. Something like wind, a wind that did not require air, rushed toward the sphere, pulling at it with malignant force. The chronological toxin was returning, not as dust, not as sludge, but as a wave of unfiltered deletion, pure, raw entropy. The sphere shook, the pressure bowing inward. Within, their minds strained, beginning to compress further, beginning to blur. "Not yet," Vance whispered. "Not like this. We are not finished." And then, something unexpected happened. A new presence touched their awareness. It was faint, distant, but unmistakably human. A sonar ping, not from within the breach realm, but from the Atlantic. Someone had returned to the trench. Another vessel. Another salvage attempt. No. Vance tried to push the thought outward, but the sphere had no voice, no form, nothing that could touch the outside world. But the incoming ping grew louder, closer, an innocent probe from the surface world searching the depths, unaware of the cosmic surgery taking place far beneath them. Sarah's consciousness tightened in panic. If they get too close, the rift will expand. The toxin will reach them. They'll become us, or worse. Kalen's awareness interlaced with hers. The protocol is failing. We must act. But how could a sphere of compressed space-time act? Then, from the fractured horizon of the breach realm, a shadow moved. Not a creature, not a ship. A memory, an echo of the vessel they replaced. The previous seal, the previous crew. Their sphere pulsed once, ancient and dim, then flickered, then crumbled. It decayed into cold dust, dissolving into the ash ocean like chalk scraped against stone. Their time had ended. Now, the Orpheus sphere began to crack. Hairline fissures spread across its surface, glowing with silver light. Not from weakness, but from pressure building within. A choice formed in the collective mind. To protect the surface world, they would need to compress further, into something even denser, even smaller, even more absolute. A singularity of consciousness. A seal no storm, no rift, no anomaly could breach again. But to do so meant erasing the last remnants of what they had been. Vance felt the crew's fear unfolding like thin sheets of paper, yet he also felt pride, resolve, connection. We end so they continue. We vanish so they remain. We closed the lid forever. The atmosphere trembled. The sphere tightened. The rift pulled harder, shrieking without sound. The ash ocean rose like a tide drawn to the breach. And at the exact moment the outside sonar ping reached its peak. At the moment, another ship unknowingly threatened the timeline. The sphere collapsed inward. No explosion. No noise. only a whisper of creation folding into itself. A new object appeared in the breach realm, a tiny black point, no larger than a grain of sand, yet impossibly heavy, dense enough to warp the ash dunes around it. A perfect seal, an unbreakable cork, a silent guardian. Above, in the Atlantic Trench, every sonar system on Earth recorded a glitch, just a flicker, then silence. The anomaly vanished from all sensors. The grey sludge retreated fully into the sealed breach, never to rise again. On the surface, Hurricane Vespa dissolved into normal atmospheric decay. No one questioned the sudden drop in energy. No one knew how close the world had come to unwriting itself. And deep below, buried in 6,000 meters of crushing dark, a pinpoint of impossible density rested quietly in the silt. Its pulse was faint, but it was there. A warning, a memory, a sacrifice, a seal that must never be disturbed. What do you think became of Commander Vance and his crew? Are they gone, or did they become something beyond human understanding? Let me know your theory in the comments. And if you want more deep-sea cosmic horror, make sure to subscribe for the next descent into the unknown.